Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Warrior Stories podcast, where we deep dive into the unique health journeys of everyday people like you and me. Health is so often taken for granted, but it's not the default setting for a surprisingly large number of people. So we are here to encourage people to keep fighting, to keep searching for answers, and we want people to know that they are not alone. If that resonates with you, be sure to click that subscribe or follow button, depending on where you are watching and or listening from, so you'll always know whenever we have a new episode out. Today, we have Nicole Chamblin with us. Her resume has a lot of tongue twisters, so bear with me. Nicole is the Chief Visionary and Leadership Coach of Visions Productivity Solutions. She's an ICF PCC credentialed coach with certifications in team, leadership, and life coaching. And if that was not impressive enough, while she was undergoing cancer treatment, she published her book, The Full Plate Detox, the time-starved Shero's Guide for Getting Back to the Top of Her Priority List, Guilt-Free. Just reading the title, I'm like, man, that sounds nice. Originally an island girl, Nicole transplanted first to New York City and now lives with her husband and son in Northern Virginia. And people, I've got to say, after reading some of her work and learning about her life, I think that this is someone that everyone can find inspiration from. Thank you so much for being with us today, Nicole. How are you?
I'm amazing. I think I'm going to have you be my front girl from now on, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this conversation
Oh, that's so
all
I
week.
just warmed my heart. For information that I don't know if anybody cares about, but you and me. You and I connected through a previous guest that we had on the podcast, Diana Dibble. If you have not listened to that podcast episode or watched it, get over there. Give it a listen.
Yes.
Diana is a force to be reckoned with. And she sent me an email here a little bit ago, and she was like, Hannah, I've got somebody that you need to know. This person is phenomenal. They are powerful and they are a warrior. They fit with your podcast goals. You got to meet Nicole. And I think the moment that we started talking, I was like, okay, well, Diana never does me wrong. And you've just been phenomenal, just even over email. So I'm thrilled that we're here. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. And I consider that high praise coming from Diana. I have so much respect for her. Um, her journey, there are nuances that resonated with me when I first met her. And the second we talked, we clicked. And as I've told her, she's never going to get rid of me.
Yeah.
In the best ways, I'll be her friend to the end. But I'm honored to be here and to be considered a warrior by someone who's fighting the fight that she is just heartwarming.
Well, I absolutely agree 100%. But I'm really excited to help people understand the journey that you went through. Looking at, so I know quite a bit, I say quite a bit, as much as I can, Google and look up online. I know about your professional career, which is chef's kiss. Oh my gosh. Like I'm a productivity, I wouldn't necessarily say productivity. I'm an organization girly. I like the organization of the organization. I like a tab. I like a list. I like a system. But I have to have those things in place in order to be productive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your specialty. So I know, and I'm very excited about your professional story. But we're going to dive into the professional, the personal, the health, the whole thing. So where makes the most sense for you to start off? Because you didn't always have cancer. You've
No.
you've had a
Um,
whole life outside of that. So where would you most enjoy jumping in?
well, the productivity side of it is actually a good place to start because it reared its head really quickly in my cancer journey. And so my past life, my first career was in marketing and advertising, and I was always the person figuring out systems. I'm like, no, there's a faster, easier, better way to
Mhm.
do this. And so I loved working on processes and systems. And when I got, to the point where I was like, all right, we want to start a family, I've always had that desire to have my own business. And I was just like, well, what am I good at outside of marketing and advertising that I can do as a business and like make it work? And I got pulled into the organizing industry because, like you, I love labels, I love systems, I love processes. And there's a whole amazing industry of organizing out there. And I was, truly in that industry and served in boards and things like that. And that's where I started to grow and develop my skill sets as far as working with clients. And the more I worked on organizing and trying to like create this beautiful file system for your office or, your information or how you work with the team, I realized that what folks were struggling with happened between their ears, our brain, our mindset, our perceptions, our behavioral habits were the first hurdles that we had to get over. So that really started pulling me into that productivity side of things. I'm a psych major from back in the day, my college days.
Hello.
Psychology, sociology, communications, those are my degree backgrounds. And that stuff just kept pulling me back. Like, so am so grateful to be where I am that I can actually use all of my education, all of my experience in this entrepreneur journey that I've been in. So I'm coming up on 18 years as an entrepreneur. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm like, am I old enough to say that? Yes. I started
you're,
when I
you're
was
wise enough to say that.
I
There you go.
started when I was 10. No. And it's been a blessing because I have been able to be incredibly present with my son, who amazes me every single day. He's definitely smarter than I am, and I'm just trying to
Don't you
keep up.
hate that?
you know, I'm looking at two of his 3D printers right now. So that
Oh
kind of,
gosh.
he's destined to be an aeronautical engineer, and I can't wait to see what he does. But so the productivity side of it kicks in that I'm very good about if there's I get into my routines. And so for everything in life for me, routines are help. They help keep me on the rails, right? And that's always been something that's been helpful for me, and especially being a solopreneur, where you're wearing 50 different hats. If you don't have routines, if you're not organized, if you don't have systems, then you're not going to be successful. And that's the underlying reason why I've been able to pivot and shift my business in different ways over the 18 years as the environment, the economy, different things have impacted that. So one of the routines that I have is like, okay, health routine, right? These are
Oh,
the doctor's appointments you go
we love to.
to, whether you like it or not. You go get the mammogram, you go get the this, you go get the that. So 2019, December 31st, I'll never forget it. I was like, all right, time for the mammogram. Let's go get it done, keep it moving. We're getting ready to celebrate, the turn of the new year. And my girlfriend had planned this really fun, her and her husband throw amazing parties, like roaring 20s themed
Oh.
New Year's Eve parties. So I had the outfit, the hair, the nails, the whole 9 yard. Went in, had the mammogram, put it behind me because as long as I've been having them, it's get them done. If they call you back, and for the men that are listening, you need to hear these words because they're
Yeah.
women in your life, right? So I had dense tissue breasts, and it's just like they're gonna call me back. It's gonna be nothing. I did the 3D mammograms. I'm okay. Celebrated. We partied the night away. Recovered. That Monday morning, I get a phone call. Hey, Miss Chamblin, we'd like you to come in for
Mm.
an ultrasound. I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound good because I did the 3D mammogram. They're not supposed to call me back. They know I'm dense." So I walked in low key knowing that something was probably there. The backstory to this is that my mom's family, six of her brothers, five had prostate cancer,
Oh.
one had stomach cancer. I had at the same time just heard of one of my first cousins who lives in the UK had been diagnosed with cancer, and I had you start to pay attention to all these other stories of who else. And I come from a large family. When I say large, I have like 40 something first cousins, large on just one side of the family.
So
And
you mean
so,
it?
it becomes a numbers game when they say 1 in 12 women may have breast cancer, right? So it was starting to rear its head in our family. So I, went in and had the ultrasound, and they called me back for we need to do a biopsy. There's a there. And so I started to prepare myself for the fact that, crap, my number maybe just got pulled.
Oh.
And it's January 9th. And so the middle of this story, the pause is the professional side. I had written my book, right? I had spent 2019 in a book camp and writing my book, and my coach and my editor, and I'm ready to launch this book. And we had our whole publishing schedule ready, and I was going to publish it right before Mother's Day, and it was going to be the perfect gift. And I had, book signings and all of these things lined up because I plan. That's my gift.
Yeah.
I'm a planner. So as I was waiting for the diagnosis and I'm editing the book, 2019 Nicole was talking to 2020 Nicole. Because the book talks about mindset, it talks about making yourself a priority, it talks about how you speak to yourself.
Oh, wow.
It was inspired by a lot of my clients saying that they were tired of pouring from an empty cup. And I was like, well, why is your cup empty? And it's like, well, I've got a full plate. Well, how do you make space for the things that you want and take things off your plate? So as I'm reading this and editing this and I'm waiting for the call, like my mind is like, okay, I can do this, right? Let me make space. I think I'm going to have to make space. And I'll never forget sitting on the couch. My husband had called in. I had him in one phone. And yeah, I still have a landline. So the landline rings.
Hey, no shame.
All right. And, in my head, I went back to TV where they call you into the office for bad news. So I'm like, oh, she's calling me on the phone. It's good.
Yeah.
And then she said the words, Mrs. Chamblin, you have a small cancer.
You're like, you couldn't have called me into the office for this?
And my husband heard it because I had it on speakerphone. And
Oh,
she literally, it was the shortest call. It was the radiology doctor. And she just was like, please, get back in touch with your doctor. They'll help you figure out what to do. I have no doubt that you'll be okay. So I took that. I'm like, she sees this all the time.
yeah.
I'm going to be okay. When I went back to my GYN, I said, I want the doctor that you would send your mom to. Right. And so that's the first lesson I will tell anyone is if you're dealing with something, ask the doctor, who would you go to if this was you? Ask, who would they send their loved one to? Because I want the best referral. And she gave me a male doctor's name. And I said, no, I want a female doctor. She's like, what you asked for was the doctor that I would send my mom to. And that's who I sent my mom to. So that's who you're going to go to. Side
I
note, my
appreciate
doctor's also
the straightforward response.
my doctor's from New York. We bonded over that. She grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in. So we have these kind of real talks all the time.
This episode of the Warrior Stories podcast is made possible by Haka Life Nutrition. Haka Life Nutrition believes in a whole body health approach, from a strong mindset, making smart food choices, encouraging daily exercise, and supporting your body with quality supplements. Haka Life Nutrition produces quality of life supplements that support your joint health, support your muscles, keep your heart healthy, and keep your brain active. Head to hakalife.com/warrior to learn more and get exclusive discounts. That's hakalife.com/warrior. All right, now let's get back to the good stuff.
So I went to the doctor, and by the time, so my timeline in January was the month of the diagnoses. January 17th, I got the diagnosis. I had just done the cover. If you see my book, the front picture for my book, my photographer had this vision of like me with the sword and like the whole warrior like theme. I kind of low key felt like a pirate, but she made it work. And I took that picture. If you look at my eyes, because my friends have all called me on it since, they're like, you knew in your eyes. I had just done the biopsy. I was waiting for the diagnosis, but I knew there was something there. And so, I had all this preparation things that were happening. And when I went to the doctor's office, I thought that the worst of it was like, all right, we're going to have to do surgery. You'll be all right. And then you'll be able to bounce back. And my husband and I walked in like with this mindset, cut it out and we're going to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hit with the second pathology report, which said that you have an aggressively growing type of cancer.
Oh.
So I don't do things the easy way.
No, full throttle.
Right.
I get it.
Why just half step it if you're going to have cancer? Go for the aggressive one. I don't mean to make a joke, but this is
But we have to joke.
This is how I cope.
Yep.
And so what I learned, that started my learning journey about this cancer thing. And you said it right before, no two people, even if you have the same diagnosis, HER2 positive, stage 2 cancer, in the space of 1 year between my mammograms, my cancer had grown to 2 centimeters.
Oh my
It grew
gosh.
5 times faster than normal cancer. What I learned was this was the cancer who many years, 20, 30 years ago, had been killing so many women because they would go in and do the lumpectomy route and think they had everything. But there'd be a little speck that was growing and moving. And by the time they found it again, it had spread to the rest of their body. So my doctor said, not that there's a good type of cancer, but at least this one, they found a medicine that actually kills it. So I thought, okay, let's cut it out and keep it moving. He's like, no, the protocol is chemo, then surgery, and then we see from there. So the productivity side of me now, I want to line up my full plan. And I keep asking my doctor, well, what's next? And what's next? I ask 1,000 questions, which is why I'm so glad I found coaching because it's the perfect industry. I can get away with just keep asking you
I
questions.
feel that in my heart.
Right? My mama, like all those why questions that I gave her, like, mom, it paid off. And so I kept asking him questions, and he was like, don't worry, I promise you, we're going to quarterback this thing. Let's take it in stages because every stage informs the next.
Ugh.
And my brain, and I think that was probably one of the most stressful aspects for me because I want to have plan A, B, C, D, and E.
I love a
And
contingency plan for a contingency plan.
I need those backups. And so, I had to kind of pull that back a little bit because through the journey, it was really just a matter of we're gonna see what we have. So, went to my oncologist, my oncology doctor, and I remember I kind of wore this shirt on purpose, like because I'm a little bit. I'll show you. So I always wear like low V nut shirts. I stand in front of groups. I'm training all day. I want to be comfortable. And he looked at me and he was just like, well, you might not want to wear those low cut shirts, not low cut, but the V-neck shirts anymore.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why? He's like, well, you're going to have a port. You're going to have scars. Well, this was my second cancer scar. And there's a little one up here as well. And I'm like, dude, this is part of my story right now.
Let it breathe.
I'm not hiding. I have other scars that I'm hiding. Y'all don't need to see. But, the idea of like right off the bat, it started like that thing that starts in the back of your head of the external part of your treatment. And what I realized is that everyone focuses on that external part of your treatment. And it's the internal part that'll mess you up if you're not careful, like what happens in here. Kind of like what I learned with
Absolutely.
my professional journey. It's the stuff in your head that you got to really get right. So the course of my treatment, because again, I don't do things half step. I did 18 weeks of chemotherapy, went to do my double mastectomy. I was like, my upside, I went for what's called a deep flap reconstruction, which is take your belly fat and make, give you new boobs. P.S., did I mention I was doing cancer treatment through COVID? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
um,
Just get all the emergencies out,
yeah.
global emergencies, personal emergencies, existential crises, just get it all out at once.
Someone today, I actually met a woman at a networking event today, and we were talking. She's going through her cancer journey now, so we were talking about it, and they were asking me, "Well, did COVID help or hurt?" And I was super fortunate and incredibly blessed. My doctor had a standalone facility. I was still able to get my chemotherapy treatment. I was about maybe I actually my first chemotherapy treatment, they shut everything down after that. My husband was able to go to 2 more treatments with me before they told him no more visitors.
Mm.
So for 14 treatments, it was me and my oncology nurses who were amazing. I was blessed with just some of the most incredible support staff, and they took care of us. Once we walked in those doors, we were theirs. They took care of us like we were family.
That's so wonderful.
But I was still able to get my treatment, which was a blessing. Went to get my surgery, and because again, I don't do things halfway, they do a pathology check in surgery, and they found another spot of cancer.
Mm.
And it was different. I had 2 different types of cancers growing. And it
Wow.
had jumped to my lymph nodes, so they had to remove lymph nodes. And thankfully, it was only that one. They caught it right at the beginning. But it's again like every time, one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away is like every time you think you're at the end of that path, it's like, no, there's something else. So, for one of the other aspects for me was just always asking questions and negotiating with my doctors. Like, so when my doctor wanted to start treatment, I was like, well, I've got some travel coming up and I want to be able to come back to clients. So can I complete these projects and then we start treatment? you know, and then when he picked a day and he actually picked my birthday and I was like, all right, if we have to. And he just looked at my face. He's like, what now? And we had built this rapport. And I was like, that's kind of my birthday. I didn't want to have that memory. He's like, he picked it 2 days later. He goes, that's it. That's my final offer. And I'm like, sold, take
All
it.
right, we can
We'll
we
start
can do
treatment.
that.
But again, education was always key. And I'm a lifelong learner. I always have, as you see behind me, I have my nose in books. I'm always reading. And so we started to learn, not just I started to learn not just about cancer and my type of cancer, but a lot about my family's health history. I mentioned before that I had all these uncles who had dealt with prostate cancer. So they sent me for genetic testing, and I'm Jamaican, and my Jamaican profile came back that I have a variation on the BRCA2 gene. And they call it a variation because there's just not enough research to know in Jamaicans is that how the mutation shows up. But what I learned is that, and this is again a pointer for those of us who may have to deal with that, is it's the same gene for both prostate cancer and breast cancer,
Oh,
the
wow.
BRCA2. And so I had to start educating myself. Like,
Hmm.
what does this mean? I was fortunately enough to get my report, and I sent it out to all my first cousins because I said, hey guys, it's a numbers game. We've had too many of us, unfortunately pull the card. If you're not doing your mammograms, like that's my soapbox moment, get
Absolutely.
your mammograms. If you think that being squashed and flattened and having a tech handle your boobs is uncomfortable, it is nothing compared to, I stopped counting after the 52 people that had to handle me. you know, I got to the
Yeah,
part,
the once a year mammogram is far less invasive.
far less. I got so, I mean, my poor husband, how many times he saw me strip in front of like, yeah, oh yeah, you want to handle it? Go ahead. And I became very like, yeah, okay, all right. They're feeling the boobs because they have to, right? And you get to the place where you will do the things that you never thought you would be comfortable doing or you would have to do. And by no means did I say I'm comfortable like flashing folks. I'm never going to be, I'm not that gal. But you have to get comfortable with vulnerability. I had to. Um, I'm actually an introvert, believe it or not. My behavioral style is I tend to be more guarded, more formal. And those were huge hurdles that I had to get past. I had to just talk to myself and say, you have to do it. I remember sitting outside the radiation because I also had to get 5 weeks of radiation. I remember one day sitting outside. My husband couldn't come in with me and he had to go back to work. Like we were all dealing with all this craziness, crying because I just didn't want to walk in the room. Because out of everything I had gone to, laying on that radiation table was the time when I felt the most vulnerable. And it's something that you can't explain to someone unless they're there, but you're just everything's exposed and there's cameras and you're in a room by yourself and you can't move and and um I remember the tears rolling down my face knowing I had to walk in the building, but knowing, well, if you don't walk in the building, do you want this cancer to come back? um so I had named my cancer Felicia. Yes, I did. I did, and
I love it.
my nurse, my breast cancer nurse navigator, who, by the way, if you're going through treatment, most hospitals, health plans will give you a navigator because all that medical stuff that you don't understand, they do, and they can help you. So I was super fortunate. I had two. My health plan gave me a nurse navigator, and my hospital gave me a nurse navigator. So I had two people I could like pick their brain with. I found an online support group that was incredibly helpful where they group you with, and I'll share this link with you when we're done.
Yeah, that would be
For anyone
awesome.
who's going through, they group you with people who have the same type of, like breast cancer versus, prostate, and it's run moderated by a social worker. But it was a place to go and talk, and oh my gosh, I lost my hair, and oh my gosh, I can't eat food, and black pepper tastes like habanero peppers, and I love spicy but I can't touch it. I'm super sensitive to smells, and all the different things that happen in your treatment that you can't be prepared for until it happens to you. um, but you want someone else who gets it that you can talk to and be like, I don't want to complain to other people, but do you deal with this? Or how do you handle this, right? How do I handle the drains from my surgery? All the things that you don't know until you're there. And that was kind of, I understood very quickly when my doctor was like, let's wait till we get there, because you have no idea what you're going to need until you're in that space. They didn't know they were going to find another cancer. So while I had my nurse navigator, I asked her, well, when they take it out of my body, can you just say bye, Felicia? And, if anyone
Yes.
else says it, I just
Yes.
want somebody in the room to say, bye, Felicia. And so she did. I love her.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Heather, if you're hearing this. I love you. And then, they found the next one. I'm like, damn it, Felicia bought a friend. And that's how we talked about it. My son says it's cringy, but it
I
helped
embrace the
me.
cringe.
It helped me, and you kind of got to like it strips you bare, right? Treatment, cancer treatment, terminal or critical diagnoses, they strip you bare and you see what you're made of, right? And oftentimes you have more than you ever think you're ever going to have. You're capable beyond belief of strength and healing and overcoming. And you have to know that. What truly helped me know that I was going to navigate this was my faith. In between the January and March timeframe where it was diagnoses, and I skipped over all the different tests and scans and blood work and things that they make you do to kind of get ready for your treatment. Our bishop at church started, he one day he just started and he was like, I'm led to start a series on healing. So I'm going to press pause on this and then we're going to talk about healing. And he did 3 weeks. And Hannah, no joke, I was like, this man is in my head. He's reading my emails, my text messages. I would read a devotion, I read my Bible every day. And I'd go to church and he's talking about the same thing. I was like, he's not using the same devotion. Or someone will have sent me a scripture or something to like to boost my spirits, the few people that knew. And he's talking about it. So the lesson that he shared was just that sometimes God will test you in ways where you just need to grow stronger so that you can be used for that next thing. And he said, it's not about, he said there are different types of faith. Maybe you have money faith, but you need healing faith. And within the 3 weeks, I sat there and I'll never forget sitting in church, holding my husband on one hand, my son on the other, tears pouring down my face, because I said to myself, by his stripes, I'm healed. I am claiming my healing. I'm going to be okay.
I have
And through
chills.
everything, I kept coming back to that. Every time I had to, there was the friend of Felicia, or now you have to do radiation. Oh, you got to go back for 6 more months of infusion therapy, like all of those. And I knew that I was going to be okay. And my oncologist said it to me, right? When we were talking about you're going to have a scar. And he said, listen, it's going to suck. Treatment's going to suck. I'm not going to lie to you. But it's curative and you're not alone. And I think that's also what helped. I wasn't alone, used to making decisions, used to being the go-to person, the ones my clients will ask, what about so and so, helping my collaborators. I have friends and colleagues and peers in the entrepreneur space, and we'll talk and stuff, and you're used to giving answers or finding answers. I'm always, like I said, learning, and I was in a pace where I had to fall back and trust someone else. And that's not always easy, to trust that person. The relationship you form with your treatment team, it's really, really incredible. And you better like them because they're going to be with you for a while.
Yeah.
I was with my oncologist, I was with one on in April. I go back to another in June, and the other one, other surgeon in September. I see them for the next, 3 to 4 years. And I just go in like, can I graduate? Can I get to the, a longer path between, when I see them? And I remember the first time my doctor said I could see someone else, I freaked out because I was like, no, I got to see you, because, I got, and he sat me down and he said, you're going to be okay. You're all right. Like, you're doing well, but someone else needs me. And it was like, holy crap, he ain't worried about me anymore. I'm not that critical anymore. And that's the part I was saying about the mental stuff, right? Once the physical stuff is done, I was incredibly grateful that my health plan provided me with therapy post treatment.
That is no, people don't talk about that enough. Like the necessity of looking after your mental health after dealing with a diagnosis, recovery, healing, and then just trying to, life after all of that.
It
It's so
is,
necessary.
I think that stuff was the hardest because when you're in treatment, you're just from one appointment to the next appointment to the next appointment to the next thing. And that, has an engine and a life of its own and keeps you going. So you don't have time to press pause and think about the other stuff. Yeah, every once in a while you cry it out in the shower, right? And that's where I used to cry it out in the shower because I didn't want to scare my child. know? And
It's a
then
good
you,
place
but
for it.
yeah, but you go to the next appointment. But when you don't have appointment, like you don't have 5 appointments in the week, right? In my case, my body, I literally felt like I was in someone else's body because nerves were cut, things were moved, nothing looked the same, nothing felt the same. I didn't have sensation. My son thought it was a great parlor trick to like try to tickle my stomach, knowing
Oh
I couldn't
gosh.
feel it. Like, those things, right? And therapy really helped me. And I'll never forget one of the first questions my therapist asked me. She said, I want you to journal over between now and our next session, just on this one question. Why did I get cancer?
Oh.
And when I tell you I
Ooh.
was resistant, all right, now I know how my clients feel when I ask them to do activities and exercises and
They're
coaching.
like,
I'm
oh,
like,
this isn't
"Oh,
nearly as fun as I assumed it would
no,
be.
and she's like, and I want you to handwrite it, no typing it out because I'm a Miss Tech girl. So I'm like, I can. She goes, no. And I was like, well, can I at least write it on my iPad? Because I always lose my notebooks. And since you want me to do this over 2 weeks, I always have that with me. She's like, don't cross anything out. I'm like, all right, I won't cross anything out or erase anything. It was hard because the perfectionist was like, oh, I can't fix that, right? But I was like, on my honor. But I was resistant to the activity. And then one day, probably, I think actually it was the day before I had my session with her. And I'm like, crap, I got to have something to tell her. I went into a dark room. I sat down and I wrote, I think it was 12 pages, tears pouring down my face, snot running, like,
The good cathartic stuff.
yeah, like the inner dialogue of why me, and the conversation of, well, I'm glad it wasn't my sisters. I'm glad it wasn't this cousin or that cousin, but why me? And at the end of the day, I'm really grateful she asked me to do that because who knows? Right? Like it
Which
just
is
was.
both so healing to come to that realization, and also I feel like just very terrifying.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about your story, like in my mind, and I probably the reason that this is just how I'm kind of receiving it is because it very much connects with my experience, is this stage of planning and scheduling, and I can control things because I have a plan. I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then this stage of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and especially for people who maybe have never undergone any sort of really critical diagnosis, or maybe who are even resistant to annual checkups. They don't necessarily want to do that thing. It's like we don't even want to open the door to the possibility of that kind of vulnerability, because it, like you said, it lays you bare. You can't escape it.
You can't plan for that, right? The best laid plans, you just have to take it one step at a time, right? And this is where mindset work came to play for me. Thank God I'm a coach. I have all these tools. So it was, all right, Nick, you're going to use your own tools. So I surround myself with them. For example, I have a pack of growth mindset cards. And I just turn them around. Sometimes I pick a number and I pick whatever the number is. And I'm like, all right, God wants me to learn that. So today's is one of my favorites. I am better today than I was yesterday. And that's kind of a mantra I live by where I just try every day to get up and do a little bit better than I did yesterday. So it's going to look different based on where you are in your life. There were times where my better than I did yesterday was I changed out of pajamas.
Sometimes that's huge. And I feel like
Yeah.
trying to diminish even that incremental progress
Mhm.
it really shortchanges yourself.
You have to give yourself grace and understand if you're going through that, right? You don't know what you don't know. It's nothing that you did wrong, right? Because I get into did I eat too much of this? Did I not eat enough of that?
I clearly
And
did something wrong.
right, and you have to realize that sometimes these things unfortunately just happen. Is there a genetic component for me? Yes, but for so many people, it's just their day
Luck
to
of the
go by,
draw.
right? And you have to be willing to accept that, put that behind you, and say, how do I take that next step forward? Right. And sometimes you take one step forward and then you take two steps back. Right. And that was, I remember chemotherapy felt like that. Like I would have that huge, they did it in 6 cycles. And the first week of each cycle was like the doozy. And I would, by the time I was starting to recover from the doozy, be like, God damn, I got to go back again.
The next
Right.
one would start.
And what happens now, I can look back and say, but chick, you did it. Right. Like, so if that was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my entire life,
You
now
did
when I
it.
look ahead, bring it. Like,
Yes.
you're scared to ask for that sale. You did chemo. What's your problem?
This is
Chemo,
not nearly as bad as
right?
cancer.
You went through all of these things. You I just had a memory. So I had an amazing nurse when I came out of my surgery, but I'm in surgery, I'm groggy, I'm like super out of it. And there's a song in Jamaica called Night Nurse. Just if you look up the words Night Nurse, it's old school rockers Jamaican song. But the words are along the lines of only you can quench this thirst, night nurse.
Hmm.
So here's the funny part. My friends know when I had my son and I had my C-section, me and anesthesia, it makes me say things I don't mean in the moment. Uh,
You're not alone.
and there's one set of them that's on recording, and the funny thing, my poor nurse, his name was Chris, and he introduced himself to me as I'm your night nurse. And the next day, I woke up with the recollection of singing that song to him.
Oh.
So, Chris, if you're out there and you're hearing this, thank you for your patience. But when I woke up in, I didn't have, it was COVID. I didn't have any of my stuff. My husband couldn't bring me anything for a day or so, and I didn't have anything to write with. And I always have ideas in my head. I'm that person with something next to the bed so I can write stuff down because I wake up with like, ooh, or like I go to sleep and I need to do a brain dump before I can
I
rest.
think we are the same person.
We are. I'm so vibing. So the thing that came to me, like when I was laying out in that bag that I had him write on my board was build your bounce back muscle. Right.
Oh, I love that.
And that for me has been like, okay, Nick, how are you going to build your bounce back muscle? Because you can't just think you're going to slide back into your old life.
Yeah, you're a new person.
Everything has shifted. And so where I'm at right now is I am reconstructed and I am recharged. Right. And those are like thematically for me, right along the lines of the difference between when someone, oh, you're a survivor, right? No, I'm a thriver, right? That's for
Yes.
me because I can't tell you the part of treatment that's hard also, right? When you're done with treatment and all the doctor's appointments and the question mark of did we get it all? Are you okay? And you ring the bell. So many people make the mistake of thinking, oh, they're fine now. If you have someone in your life that's going through this treatment, please don't abandon them once they ring that bell because that's when they need you the most.
Yep.
Folks are usually great of the meal trains and dropping stuff off and checking in on you and texting you. And everyone has their life, but I think one of the hardest things for me was that I got used to folks checking in on me. And then once they heard that, treatment's done, you rang the bell, I'm good, I didn't hear from folks as much. And I had to appreciate that they have lives. And now again, like my doctor, they're not worried about me now. They're on to like everyone has something else that they're worried about. And I had to think about, well, I now have to put forward different efforts. I now have to show up differently. I have to be the one reaching out. How are you doing? What do you have going on? Where are you? And looking at, my life. But there were times where folks would say, well, at least now you no longer have cancer, right? But you're still
Yeah,
dealing with the
but
aftermath of cancer. So, some of my aftermath resulted in me having an emergency C-section. I'm sorry, emergency. I did have an emergency C-section, an emergency hysterectomy,
mm,
right? So, talk about the changes
yeah.
that
Whew.
that brings on top of trying to recover my strength. Went from being able to being in the gym and working out for 2 hours and feeling good about myself to not being able to lift 10 pounds for 3 years because you're having all these surgeries on your upper body and you're on lifting restriction. So 3 years, 6 surgeries later, right? I'm finally at a place where I'm like, I don't have any restrictions. I can get back to exercising again. I can start working out again. But I also have to learn new things, right? I used to be able to eat anything. Now I gotta be more mindful about my nutrition. Um, because of my breast cancer journey and my risk, the things that folks were dealing with, hot flashes and menopause that they can take, even like the phytoestrogens, I
Hmm.
can't take them
Oh, I
because
didn't think about that.
my body's already proven that it can make a different type of cancer.
Yep.
So my doctor's like, nope, not you, right? So I'll have clothes on for the interview, but I try to wear as little as possible when I can get away with it because I'm always hot. I run hot where I used to run cold. So it's all these changes, all these things. So you cannot expect that you're just going to slide right back into your old life,
Mm.
right? And I think the day that I accepted that, right, I had this resistance, right, and I kept thinking about building my bounce back muscle. I actually had to shift that idea of building my bounce back muscle because it made me think that I was going to go back to what I had before. And I had to accept that that's where reconstructed became that thematic shift for me. Like, no, yes, there'll be some things in your life that are still there from where I was before, but they may be in a different place. Things are going to fit together differently. Kind of like when you go and they reconstruct your body. I feel like the $6 million women, for those who are of a certain age like me, you'll know what I'm talking about. The younger folks, go Google it. Um, but I had to accept that I couldn't go back to anything that was the old way. I had to figure out what is my now normal going to be and accept that my now normal was going to keep shifting, right?
I think that's
Uh,
so pivotal though, because I think holding on to this image, this feeling of, this is who I was before and I'm going to get that back.
yeah,
I feel like that can be so traumatizing because you're
yeah,
not the same person.
at
You
all.
have physical and emotional scars that change who you are. And so trying to be that old version of yourself is just painful.
It really is. And that's where the therapy really helped me shift because I had to navigate and think about, well, how do I want to show up now? You go through a grieving process. You go through a
Absolutely.
grieving process for the parts of your body that, they took, and I was, if you see my old pictures, you'll see there was more of me right there. Um, and I made a decision to reconstruct my body a certain way. You also have to reconstruct your life a different way and come to terms with the fact that you are, you know, not the same person, and different doesn't mean wrong, right?
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that so much.
It really helped me, like, okay, what's the new thing going to be? And also opened up possibilities. Well, hey, I could do this, right? And when I was going back, so reconstruction, by the way, for folks who don't know, it's not a one and done surgery, right?
Mm-mm.
And that was another thing I had to learn. Like, I thought, oh, I'm good. No, no, no. You got to go back and we're going to tweak it 3 and 4 times. And so here was something like I had several doctors. My first plastic surgeon went huge. As I said, just because I had the fat doesn't mean we had to use all of it. And my body was still healing, and your lymph nodes be removed, and I had a lymphedema risk and dealing with swelling because there's going to be impact, right? There's going to be positives, there're going to be negatives, and you just kind of got to wait till you get there and figure out, how do I handle this? So there's a quote one of my biz besties, Erica, always talks about, and I might misquote it. I think it's by Jim. Is this the one by Jim Rohn? No, it's not. I'm giving her the wrong quote. But she always talks about when you make decisions in life, right? We feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to follow the course. I made this decision. I have to like follow it all the way through. And it's like, no, you could make a different decision when you realize that that decision is no longer serving you. And so even down to, yeah, my reconstruction, I thought I was going to be comfortable at that size, but you know what? I'm not. And on top of not being comfortable, I'm actually in pain,
Mm.
right? It's too big. I'm having issues. Well, I can go back and have another surgery and right size it for the body I'm in today, right? For who I am today. So that idea of the decision can shift, your mindset can shift. Your now normal is here. Do what you the best you can with what you have today and recognize that tomorrow you might have to make different decisions. And it's okay. As for me, what's been most important is, am I growing? Am I learning? Am I moving forward? Right? If I feel like I'm stuck in the same place, I got to make a shift. Maybe I got to take 2 steps to the left or 2 steps to the right. Life is a dance, right? Um, and if you're taking a step backwards, then it means that someone might be leading you backwards and taking you away from, bumping into the next couple on the dance floor. And then there are going to be times that you're taking steps forward. And that has really helped me a lot to navigate this journey and to recognize that, yeah, there's a little teeny tiny part of my brain that's always worried about, is something else going to grow back, right? Every time you go for your blood work, you sit and, my doctor's office, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I get access to the blood work because, everyone has an app these days.
Yep.
So I
Oh, I've
know the
refreshed
time.
that stuff. I'm like, let's see the results now.
I know the timing, right? And so I'm looking at them and I'm Googling this, and Dr. Google is not your friend. So I've learned, like, okay, he's going to let me know, right? And then when I go in, I can tell from his mindset and his attitude, he's just taking his notes. He's like, you're fine, you're good. So sometimes we bring worry on ourselves because we don't trust enough. And I've learned to let go and trust my experts, just like I want my clients to trust me. I've let go and learn, okay, I got to trust my doctor. But you cannot stop advocating for yourself,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Be your own health advocate. Ask questions. You don't have to be the doctor to understand the terms. You don't have to understand the nuances, but ask questions. Ask 1,001 questions. What happens if this? What happens if that? And I know that that is sometimes hard for folks because you get paralyzed with fear. You get paralyzed with the news. Sometimes the treatment path can feel rushed, right? Don't be afraid to slow it down and ask. And if the person in front of you isn't the right one to ask them who is the right person for me to ask.
I think that's
Because
so important. And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
get maybe a little intimidated in the doctor's office.
Yeah,
And I feel like not enough people are confident enough, maybe, just with medical terminology or even just advocating for themselves in the doctor's office,
that's
to ask questions and to say, maybe I would prefer this type of treatment, or who do you
mhm.
recommend? Like, a lot of people are very much like, oh, well, this is my doctor, they know what they're doing, or I don't have the authority to demand these questions. And I'm like, demand away.
Yeah,
This is your life, this is your
absolutely.
health.
Even if it's nothing but, I would always say things like, explain it to me in layman's terms,
Yep.
right? What am I dealing with post treatment, post surgery, post this, right? Um, how will this impact my day to day life? Even if, I'm now an old pro at getting surgeries, so I always ask my doctor, like, okay, what is it like for me 2 days out, 1 week out, 2 weeks out, a month out,
Hmm.
right? And especially, folks like me, I had a child. I had to make sure, like, all of my surgeries, I navigate. My husband has to take time off of work to move me around. My kid is in school, so you want to know, like, how is this going to influence the decisions my family makes on a day to day? For
Absolutely.
those, I was incredibly fortunate and so blessed. Believe it or not, I still worked through all of it.
Which is just so impressive. It's impressive, it's shocking,
It's
it's
ridiculous. But I had amazing clients and friends and support folks that gave me guardrails, right? So we came to agreements on, I need to do enough that I'm not sitting here thinking about it because my brain will take it down the wrong path, but enough to also know that I'm not pushing myself too hard. And then I gave my client and my husband, I was like, go ahead, you can double check with him, and they had like their little side chat. Am I asking too much of her? Is she okay? Can she do this? But it really helped me being in service to others, showing up, pandemic, thankfully everyone on board. It's the idea of virtual trainings. I've been using virtual tools for 18 something years. And I was like, yes, we can do this training. Yes, we can do this webinar. No, I don't have to travel. So that, my doctor telling me you won't be able to go into trainings anymore. I was like, haha, still working
Oh darn.
with a scarf on my head,
My
rocking a
introverted
Barbie.
heart is just so displeased by that.
Yeah, yeah. For the longest time, I got away with not having to be on camera. That was amazing, because I never liked myself on camera. But we're getting back to that. That was even before treatment. I always like look at stuff and pick it apart. But working even that little bit helped me bridge through. Right, helped me to still feel productive, and I think that's what you know, God bless those folks who have to actually go on site into a job, working for someone else, struggling with the impact of if I don't work, I won't get health insurance.
Absolutely.
I think that's a whole other conversation about health insurance and the
We could be
financial
here for
impact.
days.
So, side tip what I learned. I remember after my surgery getting that bill.
Oh my gosh.
And
I
it was
that
an
my
annual
stomach just dropped just
it was
thinking
an
about that.
annual salary, right? A six-figure annual salary. And sitting down, and I was like, okay, now I understand why people go bankrupt because of medical bills. But God, my health plan gave me a nurse navigator for the medical questions. They gave me a financial navigator
Ooh.
for all the financial stuff. And I love her. Althea was amazing. She would say, hey, consider me your personal assistant. Any invoices that you
Okay.
get, send them to me first. I'll make the phone calls, I'll follow up, and I'll let you know if you have to pay anything. When I tell you that entire six-figure bill went away.
What? If you are just listening, just pop over to YouTube real quick so you can see the crazy faces that I'm making.
Hmm. Went
Wow.
away. I'm in Virginia, and they had initiated balance billing. And what she told me, I don't understand all the jargon behind it, but she said, no, the hospital made an agreement to accept our payment in full. So what she told me was, had I told them, yes, I'm going to make a payment, then I would be responsible for it. But
Oh.
because I spoke with her and she's like, don't say anything, don't do any payment plans, because they're quick to offer you a payment plan.
Oh yeah.
You'll be paying until your grandchildren are grown, right? And that was such an insight for me because when I was getting the phone calls from like, oh, I'm your nurse navigator, or I'm your I was like, oh, these people are just driving me crazy. The health plan has given them to me. They don't want to, pay for anything. They're just trying to find ways not to pay for anything. I'm so glad I picked up that phone because it was the exact opposite. The
Wow.
education, the knowledge, the support, the wins that those women allowed me to have through their work, through their essence. So don't be afraid to ask for support. Ask your hospital, is there a financial navigator? They all have. If you get that bill, talk first to your health plan. Do I have to pay for this, right? Have them call up and follow up. Is it that, they're supposed to accept 100% what you give them and my hands are off, right? You'd be so surprised. Don't agree to pay for anything until you have that conversation. And then if you absolutely have to, call them. And you know what my navigation is like, if you have to, then you can agree to pay them $1 a month, whatever you can. Don't stress yourself out, right? So it's things like that that I've learned through this journey that I never thought, was even possible. So anyone that I talk to that I know that's going through it, that's like, okay, if you have to have a mastectomy, jump on Amazon. You get these things for your drains. It's in the shower. It holds you up. Make sure you're fine. Make sure you talk to your nurse navigator. Make sure you talk to your financial navigator. Like, ask those questions because, again, it goes back to asking. Don't take it at face value. You're not offending anyone, you're not insulting anyone. It's their job to ask her your questions. It's their job to give you information. It's informed consent, informed treatment, right? Yes, your doctors, they have knowledge and they're surgeons and they're fancy, but don't think it's like Grey's Anatomy where they're coming up with a solution in 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
I am a Grey's Anatomy junkie. My sister is a nurse. She always tells me it's not like that. I'm like, I know, but it looks good on TV.
But the drama.
Right. But ask questions. They don't know everything. Um, don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion. There were times that I was like, okay, is there someone else that I can talk to? Right. And I would go and I would ask that question. Look for the support groups where you can talk to other folks, because sometimes, be very careful though. Not everyone's situation is different. Even the same person, someone with the same diagnosis, and there's no two exact same diagnoses out there. Everyone's situation is going to be different, your health history, your genetics, etc. But use that information to inform the questions that you're asking,
Absolutely.
so that you can do a little bit better. And be careful with what you Google, because you can scare the crap out of yourself with some of the things
Yeah.
that you come up with, and you freak yourself out for no good reason. I did that a couple of times and I was like, I am not going to do that again.
This episode of the Warrior Stories podcast is made possible by Haka Life Nutrition. Haka Life Nutrition believes in a whole body health approach, from a strong mindset, making smart food choices, encouraging daily exercise, and supporting your body with quality supplements. Haka Life Nutrition produces quality of life supplements that support your joint health, support your muscles, keep your heart healthy, and keep your brain active. Head to hakalife.com/warrior to learn more and get exclusive discounts. That's hakalife.com/warrior. All right, now let's get back to the good stuff.
I think one of the things, and I don't even necessarily know if I have a question, it's just something that I keep coming back to as you talk about your story. I feel like there's this really beautiful kind of juxtaposition between trust and questioning.
Yeah.
And, there, you absolutely have to ask questions. You have to get to the bottom of things, and you have to plan and schedule. But then there's also a very important time when you have to just trust and have faith and let go. And I think that the point between those two places, you just kind of have to float there sometimes.
Yeah.
And I love so much that your story has really combined both of those. And I feel like so many people are like, no, I have to only exist in one place where it's either complete faith and complete trust, or I have to question everything and plan everything to a T. Yeah. And you have to just be willing to go back and forth between those two places as needed.
Yeah.
And I love that so much.
Thank you. As a planner, as someone who's like my whole life, that's been my fallback. All right, let me plan. Learning to know when I could and couldn't plan helped me. Like I had to, okay, I'll ask the questions, I'll negotiate, right? And it's supposed to be a dialogue. I was so blessed with amazing surgeons who talked to me. All right, what's your concern? All right, here's the real story. Here's this, here's that. You have a choice, right? So we would have conversations, and it allowed me to feel comfortable to let go, because they weren't trying to rush me. They weren't trying to just be like, do this because, like, think about when you were a kid. If your parents said do this because, you weren't trusting that, right? So it's kind of the same thing. You have to have conversation and dialogue. And if you feel like your treatment team are rushing you through treatment and they're not taking the time to listen to you, they're not taking the time to answer your questions, it's okay to ask for a different treatment team. Because in order to get to the place where you can let go and trust, you have to know that they understand you, they're listening to you, that you are a real human being to them, right? That was something that was always so meaningful to me. I didn't just feel like another person in the seat, like they knew me. My oncology team would ask me questions about my son and what's he printing on his 3D printer. And, they would listen to me and my husband trying to figure out, my husband would go shopping for food and God bless him, like during those times where you were so defensive when you went out into the public, right? Because it was at the height of the worst where we knew nothing. We were just all in that space together. And, you know, I'll never forget one of the nurses, she was like, so what's on the menu for dinner this week? Because I always get hungry listening to y'all talk while he's
Aw.
talking, right? Because you need your whole team. And, there were decisions I made that upset some. I did not tell everyone about my treatment. I didn't go public on social media until about 7, 8 months in. And I had folks that were pissed. Absolutely. How come you didn't tell me? And it was because of this. And I want you to know this wholeheartedly for those who are listening out there. You don't owe anyone anything in terms of your personal information or your energy or your story. Some of them just want what my girlfriend would call the chisme, the gossip, right? And they're not helpful to you. Others are going to tell you about what their Aunt Mary Jane so and so did and how it helped her. And that story they think is encouraging, but it might not be for you. And then you have all of the home remedies and the folks that tell you don't do chemo and don't this and do that. And it gets overwhelming managing other people's emotions. So I made a decision that I couldn't deal with it. Even before COVID, I couldn't deal with managing everyone else's decisions and emotions and input. So I was very selective about who I told from day one. It was a very, very tight circle. And that's what I needed to maintain my peace of mind, to still have enough energy to be present for my son, to still be able to engage and have conversations with my husband, to still be able to show up once a week and do a webinar for my client, was to protect and guard my energy. And that's really important, especially women. I this is why I love working with women. That's
I
why
know exactly what you're going to say, and I agree.
that is why the title of my book is Get Back to the Top of Your Priority List, Guilt Free. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't worry about everybody else all the time. And that's what sometimes gets us in situations. Don't skip your mammograms because you're so busy doing something for someone else. Don't skip your checks. There's so, unfortunately too many women that I know personally who have not made it because they went too late. They didn't follow through on their visits, right? Or by the time they caught it, it was so far down the path because they kept ignoring it and putting their own health on the back burner. Yes, our natural instinct is to take care of others. And I'm a mom, right? My daughter, my son, I'm 100 like what do they need? What does my family need? And you're always there. And I always stop and say, if I had not gone for that mammogram December 31st, 2019, I wouldn't be here for this podcast today.
Every single one counts.
Please, if you have a woman that you love and she's avoiding it, she has to go to the gynecologist, get your pap smears, right? It's not just if you're sexually active, it's so important. Cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, by the time you're feeling your symptoms, it's almost too late, right? Breast cancer. I met a woman today who has stage 4. She had a lump. They caught the lump. She thought she was fine. Felt pain in her back. Went back to the doctor. Breast cancer has spread through her bones. Right? We have to make space for ourselves. So I look at it as I need to teach my daughter. I need to teach my grandsons. I need to teach my son that you have to prioritize your well being and health in order to show up for anyone else. It's not selfish, it's self care. And self care is productivity, right? Sleep is one of the most important things you can do for you want to be better in productivity. Get some sleep, go to bed, right? Guard your mindset. Not everyone needs to know your story. Not everyone should be in your circle or know all your business. Um, I have very healthy boundaries, and I've had to work hard to like decide where those are, because if I let all that stuff come in here, I can't. You can't get positive. You can't get to the positivity if all you're absorbing is negativity. So there are times I'm just like, nope, not watching the news today. I don't bury my head in the sand, but I know I'm not of a mindset to listen to that, right? Um, so, and there are folks that are not as close in my life as they used to be just because I couldn't handle the emotional baggage that came. So, you really do want to think about, how do I make myself the top of my priority list to make sure you're taking care of yourself? You can't help folks if you're not here. And that was a lesson that was reinforced for me. And that's what I said, what I meant when I said 2019 Nicole was talking to 2020 Nicole. Every first thought I had was about someone else. And finally, the doctor, my husband, sat me down like, babe, you need to focus on just you. So I was blessed that I have a partner and a husband who came right in. And I mean, he could always cook and clean and do all that stuff anyway. That's why I married him. One of the reasons. Right? But he told me, he's like, don't worry, I've got our son. Like, he's like, I've got him. We call him my son. We call my son Handsome. He's like, I got Handsome. Don't worry about it. Focus on what you need to do for yourself. What do you need? And that was one of the hard parts for me, was like, yes, teaching what I teach, writing the book that I wrote, when he's making food and he's asking me, what do I want to eat? And my default answer was always, oh, whatever's easier for you to eat, until he put it on the plate. And, I couldn't eat it because of chemo. And I was afraid to say I can't eat it. So I would not touch it. Right. And then finally we had like that moment. He was like, you have to eat. So if you can't eat what's in front of you, okay, what do you want?
Yeah.
I'll make peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay. Like, that's what you're going to have. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I know I say that and it sounds like I'm being dismissive about it or minimizing it. Believe you me, I know how hard that really is, to ask for what you need, ask for what you want. Um, as women, we don't do that often enough.
To our
And
detriment.
I'm on a little bit of a soapbox for it, because I'm a believer that when women thrive, they take everyone else with them.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
Our communities, our kids, everyone grows and thrives. We uplift. It's truly that representation of the rising tide raising all ships. But you have to take care of yourself in order to captain those ships. You have to take care of yourself in order to be that example to other people. So for me now, self-care is like part of my make sure I drink my water. I'm always like walking around with my jugs of water. My birthday gifts this year were all like, okay, I have my walker so that if the weather's crappy, I'm allergic to Virginia and I can't go outside and walk, I can walk here. Making sure healthcare is a priority for me, because it goes back to my biggest why: my kids, my grandkids, right? I tell my son, I want to be healthy enough and fit enough that whenever he decides to get married, I want to do like a crazy funky mother son dance that
Yes.
goes viral on whatever's viral media then. I can't wait till then to get healthy. I've got to take care of myself and my body now. And you have to figure out what your why is, right? For those who are listening, what's your biggest why? Because nothing else matters if you don't have that thing that's motivating you, especially when you're dealing with a critical illness. There has to be something that is important enough for you that you will keep fighting.
My gosh. I feel like our listeners are if you're just listening and not watching, you're probably like, where is Hannah? Because I usually talk a lot more during these. And this has just been terrifyingly profound. I have a lot of upcoming like annual appointments and stuff to go and check stuff with some of my doctors, and I've definitely found myself this year being like, I don't really want to go. Like
Mm,
I don't want to have to do this. Like this is not like a lot of the stuff that we've just kind of been talking about like
yeah,
you have to go. You have to get stuff checked.
yeah.
Even and I think a big part of the reason why I do manage to go and do these things is because I just make it a part of my routine.
Yeah.
You know, I put it on the calendar, I schedule stuff around it. So I kind of make a system for it. And then the day of the appointment, I'm just like, that's the only thing I'm doing that day.
Yeah.
And, or like maybe afterwards, I'll like go and get my nails done or something.
Exactly. Pair it with a reward, right? And that's like any big good habit we want to do. It's like I get a mammogram, I get a massage.
Yep. But
It's like
it is, I feel so much connection to what you're talking about, you know, reserving your energy, protecting your energy, and having a support system, and working on your health now for the things that you're planning on in the future.
yes.
Um I swear, I normally talk so much more, but every time you bring up a new topic, I'm just like, I'm supposed to hear this today. This is what I'm supposed to hear today. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
so
so much.
welcome.
This was just really beautiful. Before I get my life together, um, um,
Thank you.
before I ask our kind of final questions, I want to again remind everyone, get all the tests done.
Yeah.
Get your prostate checked, get your mammograms, go get your pap smears, go do all the things. Please, please, please. There are people in your lives that love you and that desperately want you to be around for all the big things and all the little things. You
Yes.
know, we want to be around for cups of coffee on the front porch. We want the people we love to be around for embarrassing things. You know,
So true.
we want all of the moments that we can get. So everyone, please, please, please take time to fill your cup, to take care of yourself, because in doing so, you are being around for all the people that love you, and you're serving others by serving yourself sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think we forget that.
So true. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for the ones you love.
Absolutely.
And um, the one thing I'll say is I know some folks will say it's the money, right? There are free mammogram clinics, like you can always just do a little bit of research. Don't let that stop you because let me tell you, treatment, I've already dropped how expensive it can
Yeah.
be. It's so much more, but it's so important. And I'm so grateful that if just one part of my story helps someone else. Um, it took me a little bit to get ready to talk about it, to be in a place where I could share and not like break down. And, you guys don't need to see the snot face.
Although we've all been there.
We've all been there. I try not to do it on camera, but that takes me back to that question that the therapist asked me, why did I get cancer? And because of what I do for a living, coaching and talking and training, if I got cancer so that I can be able to do things like this, to talk, to share, to inform, I love teaching. So, I always have my nose in a book, and I've been able to get a profession where I can say, oh, I learned this. Now I can teach you and pay for that certification I just did because I'm always learning something. So I look at this as it was, you know, probably the most certification that I ever had. But now I can help other people. I can give them guidance. I can give them insight. I can be a resource. And if anyone's listening and you ever want to talk, like, I'm here. Everyone's story is different. And if you feel like the folks in your life won't listen to you, I will. I'm here for you.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I have two questions at the very end. I feel like I know what your answers are kind of going to be. Um, what would you tell, like, what would be the main big thing that you tell someone if they are maybe just now starting, like they just got a diagnosis or something?
Um, I think the most important thing I would say in that moment is breathe, right? When we panic, we can't make decisions, we can't think, we can't find an answer. I still find myself sometimes taking those deep breaths to recenter me so that I can be ready to do the next thing and advocate for yourself. Asking those questions. If you don't feel like you can ask the right questions, find someone who will fight with you and ask those questions. The nurse navigator, the financial navigator, the social worker, the friend. There are resources out there available for us, but please, please, please ask. Most of the doctor's offices are pretty good about doing that. But if they're not offering you information and resources, advocate for yourself. Start by asking questions. And you are the most important person on your treatment team because you're going to have to live that life. And whatever the outcomes of your treatment are, you're the one that has to live through it. So your voice matters. You have to speak up and ask those questions and advocate for yourself. You are a part of the team. Don't just automatically assume, oh, they're the doctors, they have the degrees. No, you know yourself better than anybody else.
I love that. I love that you are the most important part of your team. I love that so much. My last question, you've talked about how you're in a very different place now than you were at the beginning. How does it feel to have come this far, to be where you are today compared to maybe where you started?
Oh, goes back to this little card that's in front of me. I am better today than I was yesterday. Um, like I said, it's that, dude, you went through cancer. You can do this. Like, get off your butt. One of the things that's happened, and I see it, like, believe it or not, I am an introvert. Every once in a while, I can connect with folks. I've learned to push through that awkwardness, right? To really connect with folks quickly. And I found my introversion taking over again with the pandemic, with treatment, because I was able to hide. And so I'm so grateful that I am finding that energy, finding that motivation, finding that little, desire to go back out and to do the work and to keep working on me so that I can say, yep, I'm better today than I was yesterday.
I love that. I can't tell you how important hearing your story has been to me today. Um, this is gonna stay with me for a very long time. You're gonna be with me in my next couple appointments. You're gonna be in my head and in my heart. And this was just so profound and so incredibly special. Thank you.
You are
Thank you
so
so much.
welcome. You are so incredibly welcome. And I've got you too. We're stuck like glue. Like I don't believe in coincidence. I know that God puts certain people in my life, in my path for a reason. And we have a saying in Jamaica, my spirit texts to you, right? And it's like what you say when you meet someone for the first time, but you feel like you've known them for a lifetime. So Hannah, my spirit text to you. We're gonna be
Okay. I'm done crying, people. I'm done.
You're
I'm
incredible.
declaring it right now. Nicole, okay. Whew, breath. Thank you so much for being with us today. Where can people find you online?
The easiest place for you to go is tinyurl.com, that little slash, and you're going to do VPSNC. That'll take you to my campsite bio page, and that'll have all the new happenings. I'm actually starting a roundtable in a couple of weeks for women who identify as introverts but want to learn to communicate and get past all of those crazy things. And I do a lot of work with communication. That's one of my backgrounds. And so I've been helping folks recharge their conversations, especially if they're coming from that introverted, my voice got quiet stage. Like, let's bring some life back into those conversations. So if you go to tinyurl.com, VPSNC, you'll find my campsite bio page. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. All right, listeners, I don't know if you are as obsessed with Nicole now as I am, but be sure to go and check out all of her links. We'll be sure to put them in the description down below. Check out her book. all of that good stuff. And that wraps up this episode of the Warrior Stories podcast. If you are interested in learning more about any of our warriors or about any of our previous episodes, be sure to head on over to hakalife.com/podcast. And if you or someone you know has an important health journey that you think needs to be shared with the world, or even if you just have an expertise or are supporting a nonprofit, whatever, we're trying to share warrior stories. We're trying to spread awareness. Comment down below if, depending on your platform, comment down below, or shoot us an email at warrior@hakalife.com. We can't wait to hear from you. And Nicole, again, thank you so much. Thank all of you so much for being with us today. Don't forget to subscribe or follow, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.